This is Boxing Gym Math, how to double your profits, and I'm going to go exactly how to do it. I've done this with multiple locations, whether they are my own, which I've opened up across many different states, as well as with other people's gyms. And I'm going to go through all of this stuff, but don't worry. I know it looks daunting and it may get a little bit mathy. I'm not a mathy person, but if we are going to embark on the endeavor of opening a boxing gym or a martial arts facility of some type, or embark on the endeavor of trying to make a better living from it and have it be more successful so we can keep our promises to our community and to our clients to give them the service we want to give them, then you need to watch this video. My name is Coach Keith Kepner, and I promise you that simply one thing. At the end of this video, you're going to walk away with a better understanding of either your current business or your future business that you plan to open. All right, so that's my promise. Let me know how I do at the end. All right. So starting off first with Boxing Gym Math. So I've doubled a few different gyms' revenues. To be clear, their revenues and their profits made them from losing money to breaking even, then to making money. So the most recent one I took from $40,000 to $80,000 in just 18 months. That's the top line revenue. Now, there are only 3 ways to grow a boxing gym, all right? And there's many ways you can slice it and dice it. I've talked about this in other videos, but it's important that whenever you're working at making your gym better and making it more secure, you really only have 3 ways to go after it. So number 1 is number of members, how many members you have. That's the number a lot of people go for because it's kind of a vanity metric oftentimes. Like, oh, I have 100 members, I have 300 members, I have 500 members. Then the second one is how much they pay, which is not so much of a vanity metric. Most gym owners feel sheepish about this from what I've seen, where they undercharge. I've been guilty of that plenty of times, almost all the time. And I think I'm finally learning my lesson. And some people will even brag about how cheap they are as an owner or as staff, and that is a really, really bad thing to do. You shouldn't brag about how cheap you are. I know there's a rationale behind why you're bragging about how cheap you are, but it's not a good thing for long term. And you'll see that as we get through in the numbers, because the numbers don't lie, right? It's cut and dry. There's no emotion, because we're all in this business because of emotion. We have passion for martial arts or boxing, and that's why you do it. So you got people in there, you got people in your sessions, whatnot, people you're training, and you're like, man, you feel the vibes, right? It's all about the vibes, and it is all about the vibes. But at the end of the day, just like with yourself, you can not have the best health metrics, right? Your blood work can be all jacked up and it can be telling you that you're about to die, even if your vibes are totally good, right? And so this is the actual medical checkup and the scalpel that we're using here. All right, and then third is the length of membership, so lifetime value. And I've talked about this deeper in other videos, so I'm not going to go deep into this because we're going to talk about a lot of other stuff. All right, now, the 3 biggest cost constraints of a boxing gym or martial arts gym is going to be essentially these in this order if you're scaled up at all, right? Second one, payroll might not be very high if it's just you running everything, which I did for like 5 or 6 years. But number 1 biggest cost that's built in and baked in oftentimes is going to be your rent. Then second is your payroll. And then third is your marketing. Yes, other things can come into play and it can wax and wane, but it really should fall into about this order, right? Your rent now actually also serves 2 purposes. It serves not only as the place you do your business, but also can serve as marketing. So that's why you shouldn't shy away from a little bit more rent sometimes in order to have better visibility. I have seen, or we have all seen, boxing gyms, let's say, where oftentimes you cannot find them to save your life. If somebody said, hey, take this address and find this boxing gym and do it in 30 minutes, but you can't use your phone, can't use anything else, you may not be able to find a thing, right? We've all seen that. You don't want to be that. It's going to be harder to grow. Yes, you can still be moderately successful, but any level of success you have could be 2, 3x, 4x, 5x if you just got more visibility, right? That alone can be oftentimes a lot of your marketing, and you can chalk that into expenses, and that goes a little bit more detail on that. And then second is payroll. That is if you're staffed out and you're not running everything. You're actually running your own business. Maybe you're working with a few fighters on the side and overseeing your coaches and operations, or even just overseeing sales and things like that, or overseeing a manager, which is kind of the situation I've had for quite a long time. Now, what margins do you want to have for your gym? A lot of times people, they understand this with retail and what is a good margin, what's a bad margin. But most of the time when I talk to boxing gym owners or martial arts gym owners as well, they don't know this, they don't think about this, they don't consider this. And again, they base it off of vibes. But if you only base off of vibes, you might end up dying. All right, so 20 to 40% margins is a healthy margin range to stay into, and we're going to dive deep into the numbers a little bit later in this video. All right, so what does that look like though? So if you're bringing in $600,000 top line revenue, and to make this as simple as I would need it back in 2014, is top line means the total amount of cash coming into the business. Doesn't matter where it's coming from, how it's getting there, but everything that anyone is paying you, and that's it. That's your top line. And if you look at a profit and loss statement, a P&L, the top line is that. And it's the top for a reason, because you can only do so much with a certain amount of money, right? You can't do much with zero, right? Or when the numbers get so low at your top line, it doesn't really matter what your margins are. A 30% margin of $3,000 a month that you're bringing in top line, what you going to do with that? Not much, all right? So you're doing $600,000 a year top line. So if we're operating at a 20 to 40% margin, that would be $120,000 to $240,000 in profit. So what does that mean? That means that is not only money that you could theoretically put in your pocket, but if you're a smart business owner, you'll take that money and you can put it back in, some of it back into the business for growth, or keep it and save it up as security. Because, you know, I'm sure there would never be a situation where you'd be forced to close your doors because of something like COVID or anything like that, where you'd be like, man, I wish I had some money saved up. And instead of taking out more loans or using a credit card, having those cash reserves is so important. And most of the reason why people go out of business is because they run out of cash. Because profit is a theory, right? It's a theoretical concept. Cash on hand is actually what you have liquid to do something with. You can be profitable theoretically, but if the payments on whatever it is you're profitable on maybe haven't come through, or at the timing the money has gone out, you might end up literally cash poor with nothing and still be profitable on paper, and you're going to be really screwed. All right. In that point, you do have to go into debt or whatever, borrow money from somewhere to make something work, or put off something. All right. Then $200,000 top line. I bet some of you guys watching this are in this area. The 20% would be $40,000, and the 40% would of course be double that, $80,000. So $40,000 to $80,000 profit. Now again, to be clear, I'm talking about this is actual profit. This is not owner pay, right? This is already accounting for your pay off of the gym, all right? Or maybe if you have another source of income, you're treating the gym as its own entity. So this is not necessarily owner pay. This is actually what it is profiting, producing, that can be used for anything, all right? Now, the member max cap math, all right? So maximum capacity, number of classes. How do we figure it out? Because so often we will do these things backwards. We will throw a whole bunch of classes on a schedule, and I'll show you later with the math how that can be a massive liability and sink your business. Be the thing alone that sinks your business, if not 1,000 other things that could do it. And so you don't do the math right, and you say, hey man, so-and-so wants a class this time, or I have a coach and he wants to coach this time, and she wants to do this time. And, you know, I had a few members, they said they wanted to do a 6 a.m. I had a few members that said they wanted to do a 10 p.m. on a Saturday night. You know, that'd be cool. You know, bring a couple people. And I just told them, hey, you bring a couple more people and, you know, keep it a class, right? And again, that can be the road to death and destruction as a business. So you need to know how to do your math to analyze your schedule and see if you have too many classes. Now, granted, you probably have a hybrid gym, which means you have some classes and some one-on-one personal training. We're not taking that into account right here because we're trying to be as specific as possible. you can do an analysis of the personal training. If anything, it's almost easier to do that. This is where I see most people slip up and miss the mark and end up in a bad place. Because with the personal training, within reason, I mean, of course, anyone can make mistakes on this, but you have a client that pays for a time and you determine how much of what is paid for that time goes to the coach and the facility. All right? We can go into that, but that's a whole nother video. Now, number of classes per week, so CPW, classes per week, times max cap of that class equals the maximum number of memberships you can have. So if you have, let me do some math here real quick. If you have, let's say, 21 classes, because that's a number I'm going to be using throughout this video, 21 classes a week times a maximum capacity of 15 people in a class, that means you can have 315 members. Because again, there's some give and take. Now, does that mean that some people aren't going to come more often than once a week? No, of course. Some people are going to come less. Yes, sometimes that will happen. So with the increases and decreases of seasonality and people's schedule and things like that, it is generally a good rule of thumb. It's not the most specific laser-like number, but I would rather be generally correct instead of precisely wrong. And this is a number or a calculation that will help you be generally correct so that you can be successful. All right, so, and then let's say your max cap is at 21 classes a week is 8 people in a class. That's all you can fit in your class. You got a super small gym. You're really lean and mean. It's 168 clients. And that's going to help inform you about how much you need to charge because of your overhead and everything else in order to be successful as a business. All right, now let's go to the member margin math based off of this type of model, okay? Again, this is where people, if you don't get this down or have an understanding of this, you are flying blind. And yes, you might be able to get to your destination. It can happen. But you're relying a little bit too much on luck. You don't want to jump and hope the net will appear. So the member margin math. Average month membership price divided by 8.6. So that's 2 times a week divided by 4.3 weeks. Now, what's the rationale behind the math on that? All right, so 8.6 attendant classes a month is what we're looking at. That's what we're creating with this first line here. Let me use my mouse right here. All right, so you have 4.3 weeks a month on average because not all months are created equally. So the average of that, 4.3. And so at 2 times a week, you're going to be looking at an average of 8.6 times that someone comes in a month if they come on an average 2 times a week. With most people do come in about 2 times a week. Now, depending what your model is, maybe you only allow them to come in once a week. Okay, that is what it is, and that's everybody. But 2x, I find, is generally a good number to base these off of. So 8.6. And that equals money per member times member per class. All right, and I'm going to break this down mathematically for you on a few different models on the next slide. All right, and that's going to equal y. Okay, so the number y, or the letter y rather, which is representative of a number. As you can tell, I wasn't very good at math, but I figured out the math I needed in order to survive. And then you're going to subtract coach pay for that class duration and other staff pay per that duration of time, typically an hour. Even if the class isn't an hour, it's not a bad rule of thumb to just think of 60 minutes, even if it's a 30-minute or 45-minute class because of prep and everything else. And then rent and utilities, and that is going to equal your margin. Now let's break this down mathematically and get into the math side, which some of you guys might enjoy. I definitely never enjoyed this stuff, but I've learned to enjoy it because of what it can do. All right. And again, don't be intimidated because I'm someone that I have a GED. I had to drop out of high school because I was so sick and everything else. All right. So, and I learned on the job. So let's say this top here, you have 15 clients a class. All right. So that is, if they are paying $169 a month for their membership, divided by 8.6, right? So that's going to equal, each person pays on average about $19.65 per class, all right? So if they pay $169 a month, they come on average about 2 times a week, and you have 15 people in a class, it would be 15 times 19.65, and that will equal you $294. So you have a class with those parameters of membership and attendance and everything else, you are bringing in about $294 for that class on average. Now, let's say your rent is about $5,000 a month. Some of you guys might be paying slightly less than this or maybe a little bit more than this. I find 5,000 is kind of a good middle place to analyze from. Then you divide that by 30.44 days. Why did I do 30.44? Because that not all months have the same number of days, as you know, and so the average is 30.44. Again, we're getting the general idea so that we can understand it and attack it. That's going to equal $164 that we're paying per day if we have a $5,000 a month rent. $164 per day on average, plus about $230 for overhead. So this is electrical, insurance, sometimes other staffing, everything. A lot of extra operational costs. That's going to equal a total of $394, and we're going to divide that by an average of 3 classes a day. All right, so an average of 3 classes a day, that would get us to about 21 classes a week. And then that's going to equal 131 plus a coach pay of about $20 a class. Now, this is how it's going to break down margin-wise, is $151 is going to be the cost of that class. So we divide it by 294, which is how much money we brought in. That's going to equal a 49% margin. All right, so that's a pretty healthy business. Again, you have 21 classes a week, and on average, you have 15 people in every class. You are somewhere in the ballpark of 50, 49, 45% margin on average. Note, this is 21 classes a week at 15 attendance. And so therefore, using that member math that we talked about earlier, that means you have about 315 members. Now, those of you that have run gyms, ask yourself, how many classes I have a week? Do I have 315 members? Right? Do I have a lot more, a lot less? And what do they pay? Do they pay $169? Do they pay more or less? Some of you guys watching this, they pay less. You have less members and you have just as many classes. And that's where you are. One reason why you might be struggling, or why the only reason you make any money, is because of the personal training that you do, right? Or why you have to bring in money somewhere else. All right, now let's take the same assumptions of overhead and things like that, but let's say you had 8 clients in a class. So 8 clients times 19.65, average attendance of 2 times a week, that's going to equal $157, right? So again, all the other overheads accounted for. And you might think this extra number, the 230, is big, but as we get into other aspects of the business, you're going to understand more about why that has to be what it is. All right, so that's going to equal 394 again, divide, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the cost is the same, $151. Remember, it doesn't matter if you have nobody in your class, or 1 person in your class, or 20 people in your class. The cost is going to be the same, $151. But this time we're only bringing in $157. So we have a 4% margin. So again, using the class math here, at 21 classes a week, and 8 people coming a week on average, which unfortunately I know some of you guys might have that situation going on right now. I know I did for a period of time. Then you have about 168 members. All right. Now, if you have 21 classes a week, that's a lot. You need to be charging those people quite a bit of money in order to have a healthy business that is sustainable and survivable. All right. Now, let's break that down here. So at a 30% margin, if you're bringing in $30,000 a month on average, then you have about a $21,000 a month cost. For some of you guys, you might think that's massive, but again, I'm going to go into why that is. 30% margins on a $20K top line, about $14,000 cost. And then obviously many people operate in this area and do okay. A 30% margin of a $15,000 an average month top line if they can keep their costs to $9K or below. All right. So again, it's just different ways you can slice it and scale it. All right. Now, going back here, we're going to talk about the next thing that does attribute to a lot of costs oftentimes, no matter how good your product is, your services, and everything else. And I know everyone, or most people, or a lot of people, a lot of coaches, you think you're the best at what you do, and you might be, but aside from you being the best at what you do, let's just assume that you are the best at what you do around and everything else. Do other people think that you're the best at what you do, right? And do the right people think you are the best at what you do? People that can afford to pay for your services, all right? And again, it's a whole nother thing if you all run a community boxing gym and everything else, but just accept that you're going to have to be begging for money all the time from donors, or I've seen people that have programs that have been supported by the city, and then the city funds dry up eventually. and now you're closed down, totally screwed, right? I've seen all those things happen. So why not take your fate into your own hands, just like a good fighter would, and control all the controls? All right. Now, the easiest way to increase profit, right? We can cut, right? That's an easy answer, but we can add, right? And a lot of people, they want to add clients, but they're just adding more fuel into a broken system. Not a good thing. All right. So increasing rates. And that is something that I know so many people have a knee-jerk reaction to. But again, when you look at it with the margin math that like we went through here, you know that it's something that you got to do, right? You're not getting enough of this nutrient in your diet. You're going to have to get more of that. You're deficient. And the same thing with the business. It's the same thing. It's an organism, right? It's not you. It's an organism that you are supporting and trying to grow, or you're not giving it enough food and it's losing weight and it's going to eventually starve to death and die, right? So that's the best way that I have found to look at business. Is it's not about your own personal greed or anything else. It is about growing an organism. And just like an organism, over time, as it reaches maturity, will help you, right? Just like growing a child, right? Eventually a child will become an adult and independent and someone that can be of benefit to the community or to yourself and your relationship with that child as a parent. But that is the reality of it. All right. So raise your rates. Easiest thing to do, hardest thing for some people to do. But trust me, you need to do this. And on average, about every year to 2 years, raise your rates up by a few percentage points because costs of everything else go up as well. All right. Now, how? Or what are some ramifications of how, too? You will lose some people. It will happen. But when you do the math, which I'm not going to go through right here, but when you do the math and you say increase rates by $10 a month, and then you factor in the amount of people you lose, you oftentimes either just completely even out from the change or actually get more money flowing into the business. And as you continue to grow, now you are growing a better built business that is more sustainable and you're not feeding more fuel into a broken engine. That's a massive and important distinction that you need to know and understand and grasp in order to continue to scale up. Now, what's a strategy to raise the rates on individuals? All right. You could change even pricing structures to do it the first time if you have trouble with that. One thing that I did for my model is I went from a monthly, which is you charged on a certain day of the month, to every week. All right. So changed when the billing cycle was. So instead of once a month, it was every 7 days, right? Some people do every 14 days. I recommend if you're doing a month to go to a 28, every 28 days, because then that will actually equal out to at the end of an entire calendar year, you will be getting 4 more weeks of membership dues than you would otherwise charging on a certain date of the month. All right. If you charge every week or every 14 days, like I said, if you split it up to every 7, 14 days, then you are actually going to, out of a whole 365 days, be getting more membership income than if you charge only 12 times in a year. Right. You'll actually be charging effectively 13 times in a year. So that right there is a massive lever right there that you could just switch everyone to and keep the effective rates the same as far as what the numbers are. But you change the billing cycle, right? You just dice it up a little bit different, and then out of a total year, you're actually already doing better. All right, it's pretty cool. All right, but also when you're switching it over, you can have a way, like I talked about earlier, to increase cash on hand. How do you do that? You lock in rate prepay and roll that into the marketing right at that moment. It's very, very, very powerful. So you can use that as a reason to push people over the edge that are on the fence on signing up, because a lot of people just need an incentive and a reason to go, and it's a real important reason to go. I'm all about sales, but I'm all about ethical sales, meaning actually understanding the real reasons why something is done and why it's not done. And then the second thing is for your current members. Hey, if I'm talking to you and you're a member of ours and you're on a monthly billing cycle, hey, your name, if you go ahead and prepay for a year up front, you can lock in your rate. So we'll be raising rates at the end of the month. If you can go ahead and just pay for a year up front, awesome. I'll give you an extra discount on top of that, right? Maybe give you a month for free or whatever, or effectively a month for free if you spread it out across the whole 12 months. And you get to lock in that rate, and you're not going to be subjected to this rate increase. And if that person wants to continue to do that, like prepay, cool, we'll honor that, right? But that way you get a cash injection on 5, 10, however many members you have, maybe 20 people, maybe 50 people. And like we talked about, cash on hand is the most important thing for day-to-day operations. All right. Now, that is how you do that. Now let's talk about marketing to wrap everything up into a bow. Now, is this everything you need to know to do everything you can do with a boxing gym or martial arts facility? No, but I'm giving you all the understandings that, or maybe filling in some holes that you might have that I know I had throughout many years of doing this. All right. And if you want to work with me, let's set up a time to connect, and we'd love to have an initial conversation with you. So let's talk about increasing marketing, right? So this is how we are also going to double our profits. And there's going to be some expense with this. But again, if you fix the stuff we talked about earlier, you're not pouring more fuel into a broken engine. All right. Now, so how do you market, right? Because there's so many ways to market. It's pretty simple. You have Google search ads, you have meta ads, and you have referrals, and then you have community type events you can do. All right, so let's talk about that before we talk about the 5 to 10% rule. Now, the Google search, I want to be really big about this because I just got into a wonderful, lovely conversation with someone about this who specializes in websites and a whole bunch of other things with search. And I got into it with them on SEO, right? SEO versus paid Google search ads. And I'd already gotten into this with another company like 5-6 years ago. And I was like, maybe I'm out of date. Maybe I'm wrong. But they said, hey, go do some research on it because them and I disagreed. Okay, cool. Did some research. I'm like, oh, geez. Way to confirm my bias. I end up finding that I'm actually right on what I'm saying. All right. So what is all this I'm talking about? Be careful if you have a marketing person or a marketing agency and they start talking about SEO. All right. Now, what do I mean? Am I saying complete SEO is nonsense? No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that there's basic search engine optimization that occurs with your website. All right. Speed of loading, relevant information, everything else. Okay. And we're not going to go into all of those details right now, but out of necessity, I had to learn most of that stuff. Now, with a local business, right? I'm not talking about national brands, international brands. A local business, which is what your boxing gym is, right? Or your martial arts facility. There's really within reason only so much optimization you can do with your website, all right, for SEO purposes. Now, there's optimization you can do for your website to get more people to submit information, right? So therefore you can get their information and you can get them into do a class, right? Or to join as a member or a PT client or whatever. Yes, there's definitely more you can do there. But there's relatively a finite amount you can do with the SEO optimization because Google as a business has, from my understanding and perspective, 2 incentives. The first incentive is user experience, which means what? The better that their platform can help you find the relevant thing that you're looking for, the more people are going to use it. All right? So that's one. That's on the client-facing side. And the more people that use it, guess what? On the business-facing side, the B2B side, the more power they have to sell ads to businesses and encourage people to pay Google to do Google search ads, right? So that they appear higher on keyword searches and things like that for a local area or national brands as well and international brands. So those are the 2 pillars, from my understanding, of their business model. User experience, and then becoming the best or being the best search engine there is out there, in my opinion. And the second one is for people to pay them money to advertise, not for you to pay a third-party person to do SEO work. Does that make sense? All right. So just keep that in mind when you talk to people. And, okay, so this is what the argument in the debate was that paid ads don't influence SEO, right? That's what this person said to me recently in the past month, and what I got into it with people 5 years ago. So I looked. They said, oh, no, they don't influence each other at all. Okay, cool. I looked. All right, yes, it is 2 ranking systems or metrics that Google uses, but here's the key word. Google says they work in concert. They influence each other, and they have crossover effect. Because obviously, if you use Google search to drive more traffic to your local business website in your area, Google finds that people click on that and they have a good experience from what Google can measure. they're going to push that more. That's going to increase your SEO and your rankings. And why do I know all this? Because I've done it time and time again with this exact niche that we're talking about, right? How it applies to everything else, I don't know. But how it applies to this, I do know. All right. Now, meta ads, running ads on Facebook and Instagram. What type of ads do you want to run? There's a few different ways you can slice and dice this, and I'm always discovering more ways to do this. But the bread and butter, easiest way I found is offering a first-time class for free, or maybe a consultation one time for free, depending if you're more for like a personal training style model or a class-based model, whatever, right? And you're using the Facebook opt-in form so that people submit their name, phone number, and email, and then you put them on a page to book a time. Pretty easy to set that stuff up nowadays, and you're targeting within 5 to 8 miles of your facility. And the goal of the messaging is beginner friendly, because that's the vast majority of your clientele. That's who you're going to build your business off of, or grow it at least. And you're not going to grow it off of fighters, all right? And fighters will come anyway. And then you want to make sure that everything is appealing to someone that is more of a beginner, right? So everything from the ad copy to the image is something that's going to draw that person in versus intimidate them, because a boxing gym is intimidating enough. And not that you won't have people that come in from those ads that they might eventually go into doing a little bit of competition or things like that and become actual badasses. But again, to be scalable, you have to bring in the more beginners, and you don't do that by coming across as a dangerous and scary place, because you're a dangerous and scary place anyway enough on your own without trying to advertise it. All right. Now, going on to referrals, asking for referrals when you book someone for an appointment, right? Hey, you got anyone you can bring? Oh, this person? Oh, go ahead and tell me their name and we'll put them on the schedule. So booking at that point. When they come in, asking if there's anyone that they would like to, hook up with, like a free class pass or something like that, right? And then at point of sale as well, asking a third time, do you have an individual that you want to hook up with, this, that, or other thing? You can have different incentive structures behind that. And then also continually asking for referrals as well. A closed mouth never gets fed. So you have a client, you have a great conversation with that client, and they've been a member with you for a year. I've had this happen plenty of times. And I'm just like, hey, we'd love more people like you. Do you know anyone that you've been thinking about bringing in? Or one thing that I tested relatively recently that I like is a 30 for 30 deal, right? Sometimes people will do this for people just out in the public to try to get people to come into their gym. Don't do this, okay? Because this underprices your product or service. What I like is a way to push people referrals over the edge. So what do I mean? Let's say you're a member. I say, hey, your name. We're doing this 30 for 30, meaning that someone you can hook up with 30 days for $30, right? And it has to be someone and like legit. We will not let someone do it that is not someone that you don't know. Okay, but it's a benefit. You get to look like the cool guy or cool gal that hooked someone up with a sweet, cool deal to get them in, and it helped you push that person over the edge that was the person you knew that was talking about maybe coming by, and you asked them to come by already as a member. You asked, the member asked like, hey, Susie, would you come by? And they're like, yeah, I'll come by. And they just really haven't. Helps push them over the edge. That's what we found. All right. And there's quite a few different ways to do this. And then community. So getting out in the community, making a presence, doing some tabling, doing some like lead baskets, things like that. There's a lot of ways to do that. And then also partnerships. There's some pretty cool ways to do this as well. I've had a lot of effect with and success with. All right. And then wrapping this all up at about 33 minutes in this video, the 5 to 10% rule. So what does this mean? If you want to grow and get more profitable, you're going to need to spend about 5 to 10% of your top line, or of your goal top line rather, to get there. So what does that mean? If you are at $20,000 a month and you want to hit $30,000 a month, you need to spend about $3,000 a month to do that. Now, does that mean you spend to a marketing agency $2,500 of that, and you have $500 ad spend? No. You need to do your best to make it as useful as possible and as effective as possible. And nowadays, with so much of marketing, it's relatively easy and straightforward. And you can achieve that with just a little bit of advice from someone that knows what they're doing. Or teach someone else how to do it once you learn how to do it. But again, I recommend with all these things as a business owner that you get a good idea on all of this. Maybe don't become an expert, but get a good idea why, so you can call out and identify when someone isn't doing their job, or they're blaming something else, right? Like with the whole sales and marketing thing, right? Salespeople will blame marketers will blame the salespeople, everything else. Both of those people will blame your coaches, right? Coaches will blame the custodian, right, or the front desk person, or you, the owner, and it's just like a whole bunch of blame, right? But again, the more you know about every single aspect of your business, the less that's able to happen, and you don't entertain things that don't make sense. All right, guys, hope you enjoyed this video. If you like it, comment, like, subscribe, whatnot. Reach out to me on Instagram. I'll put a link down below, and maybe we'll have an initial conversation, see if I can be any help, and watch out for the next video.